Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I am reviewing Lady Susan by Jane Austen, which I have in this collected edition with some other works, but I'm just going to be talking about Lady Susan. Lady Susan is one of Jane Austen's earliest finished works. It is an epistolary novel, although it is very, very short for a novel. I think today we would consider this a novella. And it wasn't published during her lifetime. It wasn't published shortly after her lifetime either. It was kind of rediscovered, I believe, towards the end of the 19th century. As I've just said, this is written all in letters. And through those letters, we get to know the eponymous Lady Susan, who is also described in the book as the most accomplished coquette in England. She is a woman in her mid-30s who has recently become a widow, and she is traveling to her brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house to stay some time there. The sister-in-law, Catherine, is not too keen on Lady Susan's visit. There's some personal history between them. Supposedly Lady Susan tried to prevent Catherine's own marriage, and Lady Susan's reputation as an adulteress and a flirt really does not make her a welcome guest. But Lady Susan arrives with all of her charms and all of her wit and all of her flirtatious ways, and she very soon causes some chaos in the household. Characters we meet in this book include obviously Lady Susan herself, her friend and confidant Alicia, who's very similar to Lady Susan in terms of their outlook and their philosophies. There's Lady Susan's timid 16-year-old daughter, whom she really quite detests. There is obviously the lady of the house, Catherine, and her younger brother, Reginald. There is the odd suitor or two, and through those people we get to experience Lady Susan's shenanigans. Lady Susan is such a unique Austen character in that she is nothing like her other heroines. Though I should say that one thing I like about Jane Austen in general is that her main characters are very different from each other. Even in the main novels, if you look at Emma Woodhouse, she's very different from Anne Elliot, and she's very different from Fanny Price, and she's very different from Elizabeth Bennet, and she's very different from Marion Dashwood. You get what I mean. All of Jane Austen's main characters are quite distinct and very different from each other. And Lady Susan is like no other Austen character as well. First of all, she is Jane Austen's oldest heroine, being 35 or 36 even. She is a widow. She is possibly the most confident of all of Jane Austen's main characters, and she is a villain, not a heroine. She's absolutely horrible to those around her. She's absolutely horrible to the women who she either sees as boring or as rivals. She's really quite terrible to her own teenage daughter. She's incredibly fake. She talks sweetly to one man on one day and then writes a scathing letter about him to her friend the next day. So she is an absolute villain, but the best kind of villain, the one that you just want to observe and the one that you want to follow and the one whose story you are invested in. Because this is such a short book, in my edition it's just under 70 pages, you don't get to know the other characters as much as you do the main character. And I would have liked to see more of Lady Susan's daughter Frederica. I would have liked to see more of young Reginald. I would have liked to see more of Alicia Johnson's husband and many other characters that just don't get the treatment they deserve because it's such a short little book. Even though it is an epistolary novel, story, novella, whatever you want to call it, I read it almost like a play. The story itself, the way that it is told in my head, functions perfectly as a play. It is mostly set in this one house of Churchill, and characters come and go, and you can almost picture everything taking place in the drawing room or the dressing rooms of Churchill. There's a few scenes at the end that are actually set in London, but that's still in my mind. As I was reading it, I was picturing it almost on a stage. And like a sort of short one-act stage play, the story is a snippet of what could have been told. And that's why reading Lady Susan has kind of left me with an emptiness, with a longing that this would have been expanded into a full-length novel. Because the little character sketch we get in it is so delightful, the humour is so sharp, the characters are so masterfully drawn that I really wish we had more time with them. I really wish we had a more intricate plot to follow them through. If you have never read a Jane Austen work outside of her canon, I think Lady Susan would be the perfect place to start, because it is recognisable Austen style, recognisable Austen wit. The fact that it is so short might make it an attractive option for some people who don't want to get invested in a long story. But for me, that's where it was lacking, because I really wanted more. It's so good and I really wanted more of it. I know that this novella has been finished and expanded by contemporary authors. Generally speaking, I tend to not like those types of completions where unfinished works or short works are expanded by another author. I probably won't read those. However, I have heard that the film adaptation of this, which is confusingly titled Love and Friendship, is very, very good. So I'll be sure to give that one a watch. I just wanted to mention it here as well if you too are on the lookout for an adaptation of this. Overall though, a short but very funny read and a very lovely read, and one that I can recommend if you are fans of Jane Austen. But definitely a read that made me wish for more of Lady Susan. Let me know down below if you too have read and enjoyed Lady Susan, if you also think that there should be more of her, and it is a shame that there isn't. But what can we do? Thank you for watching. Bye!